Every ESXi host has a VMkernel network layer, and it provides connectivity to hosts for management of that host, as well as all the critical system traffic for vSphere, including things like vMotion, IP storage for network file systems, fault tolerance, VMware vSAN, vSphere replication, and much more. In this lesson, I'll show you how to configure VMkernel ports for network services. We're here in the vSphere client. We've selected a host in the inventory, and if we go into the configuration for that host, down to networking, and then specifically click on VMkernel adapters, you can see by default we have a single VMkernel adapter, and it's called VMK0. It's connected to the network label, which is called Management Network, which is on vSwitch 0. You can see this VMkernel adapter has an IP address, which is .11 in our case. Let's say that at the Wired Brain Coffee Company, they would like to have redundant VMkernel adapters, and that way if one physical network interface card goes down or loses connectivity, they'll have redundant management connections to their ESXi hosts. So how do we configure that? Well, the easiest way to do it is to click Add Networking. And you can see the default here is to add a VMkernel network adapter. And it tells us that this is for the VMkernel TCP/IP stack, and it handles critical ESXi host services like vMotion, iSCSI, NFS, fault tolerance, vSAN, host management, and more. We'll click Next, and then we have a choice of where we want this VMkernel adapter connected. Do we want it connected to an existing network? Do we want to connect it to an existing standard switch? In our case, it could be vSwitch 0. Or do we want to create a new standard switch? Let's go with vSwitch 0 and click Next. Now we get to give this VMkernel port a network label and configure IP settings. You can also enable services on specific VMkernel adapters. For example, it's very common to have a dedicated network adapter just for example, VMware vSAN, or just for vSphere replication, or just for management of the host. Of course, you can click multiple if you choose to do so. In our case, we're going to enable management on this new VMkernel adapter because that's what the Wired Brain Coffee Company is requesting of us. I'll click Next, and then you can choose to use DHCP to obtain an IP address automatically, or configure static IP addressing. In this case, we'll take the default of DHCP, click Next, and we get to review what we're about to do. Everything looks good. I'll click Finish. And you can see here we just created our new VMK1, our second or redundant VMkernel adapter. But did we really accomplish the requirements that the Wired Brain Coffee Company was asking us for? Yes, we have a redundant VMkernel adapter, but this is actually a virtual network adapter. It's not mapped directly to a physical network adapter. I mean, it does connect to a physical network adapter. You can see here, VMNIC0 is a physical network adapter. We've got the management network traffic going to it. We have our VM network traffic going to it, and we have now our VMkernel traffic going to it. But we still just have one physical network adapter. So let's fix that in just a moment. But first, let's get these VMkernel adapters both on the management network. To really accomplish that, what we'll need to do is to add a new physical network adapter. While we do have a number of physical network adapters, 4 specifically here, the other 3 physical network adapters are in a down state. That's because they're not physically connected to a network switch. However, if we go in and manage the physical network adapters for this vSwitch, we can still add redundant network adapters. And we could put these, for example, in a standby state. Of course, we still need to plug in this physical network adapter to a physical switch so that it will come up and be available. But now we do have redundant physical network adapters as well as redundant IP addresses here for management traffic of this ESXi host. At this point, we added a VMkernel adapter. We configured VMkernel adapters, which is easy to do here. But what if we wanted to remove one? Well, just like everything else in the virtual network, virtual devices are easy to add, and they're also easy to remove. So that's how easy it is to administer VMkernel adapters in VMware vSphere.